Mr. Speaker.
Dr. David Clark.
Speaker, at the start of my contribution this time, I want to just elaborate further. A member of the public has emailed in and pointed out that I must have misspoken and only mentioned the servicemen and not the servicewomen who have given service and their lives previously, and that is remembered in the plaques at the back of the House. And I also wish to remember the police personnel. And this bit of feedback from members of the public is important in and of itself, but it's also important because this is what we are doing here. We are having a debate about this particular set of special powers, the instructions that the whole House can give or have or make for a truncated process. And I am hopeful that as we on this side of the House have given feedback to the Minister, that he will consider whether the special power instructions he's trying to give are appropriate, and may even choose to withdraw in due course the motion that he has put forward to this House, because we, I think, on this side of the House have put a fairly compelling argument as to why this bill need not follow any kind of rushed, hurried special process. It's a bill that has been able to be put before the House for a long time. The sudden urgency that perhaps saw it being written this afternoon, certainly being tabled with a minute for many of us to consider before we were making speeches here in the House, need not have been the case, and it need not also be the case that we continue with a rushed process. A considered process is well worth doing. We have 120 cinemas, we're told, around the country, including commercial, independent and community cinemas, who will be affected by this legislation. And many of these community cinemas are funded by local councils, trusts, and they may only have one or two screens. They won't have a lot of resource to put in submissions. Often, certainly in the case of a cinema I attend in Dunedin, it's the same person who sets the film going that also serves the drinks in the intermission and that takes the ticket fare at the beginning of the evening. And that person, I suspect strongly, in the case of the Metro Cinema in Dunedin, will be the person probably also writing the submission to Select Committee if they so choose. And so these people who run these things often do it out of love, out of a sense of the value that they are contributing to society through the telling of stories. And let's not forget that many people today get their meaning, their life's meaning, the sense of purpose from experiences in the cinema. It's no longer the case that they head along to the local parish church on a Sunday in the same numbers that they once did. And as a minister of religion, I might say more's the pity. But I actually think that film has a huge amount to contribute to our society, and people do really interact and get a lot of value out of these screenings. And so we do have an issue here that needs proper debate, and we do have a sector of society that has a limited resource to contribute and to get the submissions in, and it then follows that we should have a proper process to enable this to happen. We've talked about the downsides. Some of my colleagues have mentioned some of the downsides, the potential downsides of the different options that were considered by officials and mentioned in the regulatory impact statement, that there be a lapse where no regulation governs this, and that there be a short period where parallel importing could take place, higgledy-piggledy as it were. And my colleagues, I think, have argued quite reasonably that that is unlikely to have a huge effect if it's only a short time span. What seems to be far more important is that we actually have the debate properly about what the proper measure is to take in order to protect the industry suitably, or to prepare it for a future transition to what is more likely to be an online environment where people access films, either in groups or individually. We're certainly seeing it individually as it happens. It'll be pretty soon the case that Mr Whāwhoi will be able to look up Smurfs and the Magic Flute in the leisure of his own room, probably through an online service dedicated to doing just that. But what we're dealing with here, with the length of ban before a parallel import, is the precursor to that new world. I suspect when the Select Committee does come to consider these issues, it will consider also the future. It won't limit itself to this ban right now and what the effect on the industry will be in the next 2 to 3 years, but the members on that committee will be exercising their minds as to what the future consequences of it will be, as will the submitters, Mr. Speaker, as will those submitters who will take time out of running the movies, out of serving the drinks, out of issuing the tickets. They will be thinking, what comes next? What impact will this legislation have not only now, but also in the future, should they wish to, in a future time, import Smurfs and the Magic Flute to show in their cinemas? How is that going to line up with what people are able to access at home through a digital environment where there's ultra-fast broadband, where this can be downloaded almost instantaneously? So this really does come back to this issue of a truncated process, which we're debating now, which we on this side of the House think is completely unnecessary and actually unhelpful. Unhelpful, because we do need to have proper process. It may even, as my colleague says, slow the process up if we go down this track, because we may end up having a more, how shall we say, edgy debate, as people feel that their voices haven't been heard in a truncated process, as they feel that some issues have been roughshod over in the debate because they haven't been considered, because members haven't, may or may not have had time to wade through the associated papers and to consider the issues at their leisure, to have conversations over a cup of coffee, or to debate across the House, not just in the chamber, but actually in those conversations that often take place in the corridors of the Parliament, where often little insights are shared and often a consensus view is formed. So sometimes this hurried process can lead to not only poorer outcomes, but a longer process when spanners are thrown in the works, when unintended consequences come to light late in the piece that can often be ironed out through a smoother and more normal process, where there are the regular means for input, when officials are able to generate timely advice. And so, Mr. Speaker, these are the consequences of rushing down this path with the truncated process. As I said at the beginning of my contribution, I am hopeful that the Minister who is pushing for this hurried process will take another call. I'm not sure whether he's entitled to in this debate to explain if he does think that this is for some reason deadly urgent. All of a sudden, this bill that was popped in this afternoon that's still got 4 months to run, and that could be even run through a normal process, probably, if there were willing participants who could see that that everything was in order when they had due time to consider it. And if that Minister is not able to make another speech, I'd be keen for him perhaps to withdraw the motion if he thinks it's appropriate, because there's certainly been a strong case put as to why hobnail boots are not required for this particular piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker. And to pick up again the earlier point around the other processes available, I mean, this could have been put through an omnibus bill, a statutes amendment bill, which could have taken that usual longer process, if indeed it is so simple as the Minister would have us believe. There are other means and methods which would take less time in the House, but which would give the due process that is really required. And to finish, I do want to come back to that point of what happens in the future. We're not only dealing with how this ban affects the industry now, but the kind of capital expenditure they'll make for their own business decisions as they invest in new equipment, because there are still some cinemas that have not converted to the most modern equipment, as to whether they are investing in a certain type of equipment in a certain type of reality where parallel imports are delayed, or whether they're likely to shift into future time to a much more immediate availability of content. And how do we protect and advance New Zealand's interests and the producers of New Zealand content, so that the Smurfs and the Magic Flute, which Mr. Whāwhoi might wish to watch today, might become the Kiwi and the Magic Flute of tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Call John Hayes.
I move that the question be now put.
The question is, the question be now put. Those of that opinion will say aye. For the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Ayes have it. Party votes called for. I'll ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 votes opposed.
Green Party.
14 votes opposed. Sorry, 13 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
7 votes in abstention.
Māori Party.
2 in favour.
Mana.
1 opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
1 in favour.
Honourable Peter
1
Dunn.
in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 opposed.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 63, the noes are 48, and there are 7 abstentions. The question will be put. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Ayes have it. Party vote's been called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 in favour.
New Zealand First.
7 in abstention.
Māori Party.
2 in favour.
Mana.
1 in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
1 in favour.
Honourable Peter Dunn.
1 in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 in favour.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 78, the noes are 33, the abstentions are 7. Motion is agreed to. Call on Government Order of the Day number 4.
Interrupted debate on the first reading of the Local Government Auckland Council Amendment Bill number 2.
Members, when we were on the first reading of the Local Government Auckland Council Amendment Bill number 2, Phil Twyford had the call and has 7 minutes remaining if he wishes. Are there any further speakers?